On the 6th of January, I heard on the computer there was a riot in the Capitol, so I turned on the news, as most of us probably were. Um, a little scared, a little angry, um, in a kind of in awe of like, is this what we've come to? Um, anyway, as I watched for a while, I was really concerned for the future of our country, for the young people, my kids, for all of us, just kind of wondering, geez, what does the future hold? What's happening with this world? And after about an hour or so, I wanted to get some fresh air. So I walked outside. I live way out in the boonies, so it was complete silence, and it was a beautiful day. The sun was shining. Um, the stillness and the peace and the sun peacefully shining, through the clouds. It was just another shock. Something, we've all seen, we've all absorbed for important moments in our life. But right then it was like, wow. It was so clear that the deep part of me wanted to welcome this loving energy that pretty quickly gifted me with the intuition that all that stuff I was watching on the screen were mere reflections of this peace and love and compassion and the kindness that I was now absorbing. That was so much bigger than anything I could imagine. And it was kind of a merging of compassion, kindness, and wisdom, and seeing the reflections, the transparent nature of our fears, of our desires, and our refusal to accept reality as it is, and our constant attempts to kind of separate ourselves from our source, from the unconditionally accepting source that we are. So in this Zoom group I'm in, we're studying Zen Master Dogen, one of probably the greatest Zen master from Japan. And part of the teaching that we're studying from his Genjo Koan, enlightenment is like the moon reflected on the water. The moon does not get wet. Although the light is wide and great, the moon is reflected, even in a puddle an inch wide. The whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in dewdrops on the grass, or even in one drop of water. Enlightenment does not divide you, just as the moon does not break the water. You cannot hinder enlightenment, just as a drop of water does not crush the moon in the sky. The depth of the drop is the height of the moon. Each reflection, however long and short its duration, manifests the vastness of the dewdrop and realizes the boundlessness of the moonlight in the sky. So for me, the wisdom in this, the merging of the wisdom and the compassion, it's like the moon and the water symbolize our Buddha nature. Our awareness of just being present, that we are all the time. And that which is permanent, that which is always with us every moment, not changed or affected by any experience we have, as the moon and the water are not affected at all by the reflection of the moon. So this teaching from Dogen is, part of his great compassion, his kindness for all beings, and he's talking about all of our experience. Buddha nature, our true source, is sometimes when we first or perceive it, but we begin to intuitively feel the presence of something unconditionally accepting. Um, all of our personal experience seems to be the foreground, and this background of our life. That which doesn't change, that which is unconditionally accepting and not limited by time or space, spaceless and timeless, and it's all pervading immensity and openness. So, one way to engage the teachings, I think, for me, is to think of it in terms of our thoughts, because our thoughts actually are, clothe all of our other experiences too. They wouldn't really be experiences if we didn't have thought energy moving around with them. So if we're willing to look at our real experience of thinking, it's like a pulsing, a vibration, kind of an alive movement. And it can't limit, define, or create any type of separation. If you think about it, all there is to thought is thinking. It's just the activity of energy moving. Can any thought be any farther away? Any thought we've had throughout our whole life, has it ever been any closer or farther away from just the presence that we are? How can it affect our presence? It's just like these flashings, like reflections. Reflections are kind of like a light, movement of light, an alive movement. And there's just this constant arising and disappearing of the energy of thinking. But the awareness that we are totally pervades the activity of thinking. So thinking itself is just kind of a modulation of this presence we are. This is hard to understand, but years and years of observing our thinking, being willing to actually explore this experience, we begin to see we can't find any substance to it. It's just this flashing going on. And so I'm sure Dogen had that experience many, many times, but probably one day he was just watching the moon reflected on the surface of the water and reminded him of that permanent nature that we are. So not only can our thought not separate anything, create any separation, or limit or define, it can't veil our nature, our Buddha nature. If you notice the gap between thoughts, just kind of briefly in your mind, interrupt the constant flow of the thinking activity, you'll notice that sometimes it kind of stops. And then it'll start up again. But awareness doesn't start and stop. The awareness we are, what actually is different about our awareness, our presence, our suchness, whether or not thinking is there? How is it any different when we're actively aware of thinking and when we're aware that there's been a pause in the letters, the words that we visualize in our mind? It's just a flashing that goes by. So just like the moon and the water are not affected by the reflections on the water, our real being is not affected by the reflections of our thinking or our seeing, hearing, or feeling. This is something we gradually come to. And then we have the freedom to more fully enter our full experience of life, and feel that kindness, the gift of a human life, of a human body. Um, here's a poem I wrote on kindness. Like a mother's love for her newborn child, the most important thing in life is a soft, open heart that knows from beyond the confines of the mind that the universe is made of loving kindness. A great master was once asked, there are so many extraordinary spiritual experiences reported by so many people. How can we know which ones are actually real? He replied, you will know when it is perfectly clear to you that the immutable foundation of the experience is kindness.